Before there was this, there was this.
What?
It all started back in 1968 when Ralph Baer, also known as the father of video games, showed the world a prototype he called the Brown Box. It would eventually be converted into the world's first commercial home video game console known as the Odyssey. Atari noticed that their arcade game Pong was a big hit, and they also built a home video game console fit for a living room. Magnavox responded to Atari by updating the Odyssey with several new models including the 100, 200, and 500, where color and smash graphics were used to identify specific characters in a game. There were 6 different models released by Magnavox before Atari even came out with the 2600, a very powerful machine for its time.
Pitfall is a graphically stunning game that is taking the VCS jungle by storm. The game is comprised of 255 different jungle scenes laid out horizontally. By running to the edge of one scene,
Did you know before Nintendo hit the video game market, they made things like pitching machines, electro poker games, and arcade games with electronic video recording? Neither did I. And before Nintendo released the family computer in 1983, it had already created 5 home-use TV video game machines in the Japanese market. Between 1977 and 1979, 4 games were released in the color TV game series, just like the one pictured on the screen. When the original NES came out, it was an instant hit amongst tech nerds all over the world. It was games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda that made the Nintendo a must-have item. Atari and other new companies wanted to join the ranks of Nintendo in video game stardom, but failed to compete with the big dog. That is, until Sega showed up in the early 80s. The SG-1000 marked Sega's first entry into the home video game hardware business and came out the same day Nintendo's Family System was released. And while the system was not popular, it provided the basis for the more successful Sega Master System and Genesis. The company Neo Geo copied an old idea by Atari and tried to convert their arcade machines into home video game consoles. It was a nice try, but everything from hardware to software was really expensive. Then after 7 years since the original NES came out, the Super Nintendo was released and featured an improved 16-bit graphics card to match the power of the Sega Genesis. However, a new breed of home video game consoles would arrive shortly in the 90s and change the face of gaming as we knew it. Sony took a big risk in 1994 when they released the PlayStation, a video game console that was powerful enough to read compact disc. It was very similar to what Philips did with the CDI when it came out in 1991. The only bad thing was that the CDI was more commonly recognized as a failure for its mediocre games and frustrating controllers. The Nintendo 64 was the last home video game console to still use cartridges over CDs, but several years later the company adopted a disc drive in the itty-bitty GameCube. In 2001, Microsoft jumped into the scene with the Xbox and went up against the Sony PlayStation, Nintendo GameCube, and at one time a big threat, the Sega Dreamcast. The most recent consoles to hit store shelves are the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and the newly released Wii U. Check out this short clip of Nintendo's new toy.